see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Unites people. Armies, gold, flags, stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it.
If you want to stand out from everybody else, you need to get into storytelling.
Draw a different frame around the same set of circumstances and new pathways come into view.
Welcome to ArtefactLive with me, Scott McArthur, where we look at the art and science of story. We don't care who you are, whether you're a bricklayer, a professor or a speaker, all we care about is you being a good storyteller.
Thank God the drummer's arrived.
It's time to realise that facts tell, but it's stories that sell.
Get me some nasty and get it now or someone's getting shot.
And that's a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a 1,000 comments.
Selling a hemorrhoid cream to someone who's got hemorrhoids.
Got a whip.
I was born into a deep contradiction.
This stuff's magic.
God, that's so clever.
Hello and welcome to Artifact Live with me, Scott McArthur. Well, we've been on a bit of a roll, folks, haven't we? I hope you enjoyed last week. We had a really fascinating discussion about the academic side of storytelling, the sort of how difficult it is to use facts to change people's minds. And I remind you, what I always say is that I believe that facts tell, but it's stories that sell. And I'm very grateful for the various guests we've had that have been coming from both sides of that debate. And I think we're starting to see some quite strong themes come through. But this week, well, I've got a real treat lined up for you this week, because you've heard me talk, and I did an episode way back about filmmaking. And I come at it very much from the amateur perspective, and I make corporate films and do this sort of thing. I don't really know anything about filmmaking. And I've spoken about the likes of McGee, and we had Ewan Morrison on a few weeks ago talking about their experiences with filmmaking. But this week, I've got Marianna Pulka here, who is a Scottish director, film director, screenwriter and actress. So we're absolutely chuffed to bits to have her on. This is a lassie from Glasgow who lives in California and directs films on Netflix. I mean, come on. So on you come, Marianna. Was that a fair introduction?
That's the best intro of my whole life. Thank you so much, Scott.
So welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So thanks for joining me. So for those of you who don't, I'm going to start gushing like a fanboy in a minute about some of the films you've made, but could you maybe give the bio that you would like to put forward at this stage in your career? Marianna, would that be all right? Could you tell us?
I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan of yours, honestly. I'm like your number one fan. I'm running your fan club, definitely.
Okay, the California branch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I did start out in plays. I was doing plays in New York when I was 17, acting. And then when I came to California, I ended up, do you know what I mean, like just not having the same creative vibe. And then I had to write my first film so I could be in it. And so I directed that. And I was definitely not expecting it to go to Sundance, which it did go to Sundance. It was in dramatic competition. I was really young. I was the youngest director there. And then since then, I've done 12 films.
12,
directed them 12. I know, it's a lot.
That's amazing.
It's a lot.
And you must you're only 19 or something, aren't you? So
I know, I'm a child still. I'm still an embryo, actually. I'm still in my stomach, so it's dead weird. I'm directing. My mum's like, why is she doing that?
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting because I do think the Glasgow, being from Glasgow, being a lass from Glasgow is the reason why I think I'm doing this. Do you know what I mean? Because I've got so
Right.
much support from my family in Scotland, and I can come back and forth all the time, and I don't feel like I haven't felt like that's a weird thing to do. I felt like very supported in that. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think in the 70s, if you were trying to do that, they used to say you were Sean Connery, and they were like, "You need to pick a country." Do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
now I think everybody's just like, whatever, it's fine, you know.
Yes. Yes. So can I
So,
take you back a wee bit, because you really
yeah,
flippantly there I went from being a lassie in Glasgow to New York.
I know.
How at
Big
17?
jump.
What happened?
It's a mega jump. Okay, so
Yeah.
I just knew I wanted to study. For some reason, I knew I wanted to study in New York, specifically acting.
Okay.
I wanted to have a theater company there. Like, I had all these dreams about acting and plays in New York when I was a kid, and then so I was like, I know I'm going to New York. Like, I did not want to go to England, no offense, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to go anywhere else. I was like, I just want to go to New York and do plays. I know that. So I'd literally got on a plane and went to New York for 2 weeks.
Did you?
Looked at all the theaters, looked around, and I had some friends who were Scottish who were in New York, just pals of mine who were like pals with my mum, basically.
Right.
And they sort of showed me the ropes of what it's like to live there, and I just loved it so much. And then I went to the Atlantic Theatre Company and I said, look, you guys, I really want to study here. I really want to do your conservatory program. And they were so up for it. They were really into it. And I just couldn't believe that they were so supportive, because I was dead young. I was 17, you know, I was a baby.
That's amazing. And how did you, I mean, that's a very bold step for anyone to make, particularly 17-year-olds, but how did you then, you said a minute or two ago that you wanted to be in a film or direct a film, so you had to write it yourself. What was that about? What happened there? What was that particular film as well?
Okay, so that was Good Dick, which is a love story. Yes, I designed that poster.
Did you?
It's very intimate. Yeah, it's a real film about intimacy. It's based on a story about, you know, this woman who's been sexually abused in her childhood, and like, what do you then do in life? Because I read a statistic that 1 in 3 women are sexually abused as children.
Good.
And that was when it was a long time ago. It was like very pre-Me Too movement. Do you know what I mean? But it just stressed me out, that statistic, and I felt like, how do you get over that? Or, you know, how can you even hold somebody's hand? Or, you know, why would you get out of bed in the morning if that has happened to you? You know what I mean? So I wanted to make a film for those people. Do you know what I mean? Like, I grew up watching a lot of Polish cinema, grew up watching a lot of Scottish films, and just felt like I knew what authentic was in film. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted to see that. I wanted to have the feeling I had doing plays in New York, but I wanted to put it in films. So that's why I did Good Dick. And also, well, I went to Sundance and Sean Connery gave me an award for it at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I almost died. Like, I'm surprised I'm still here, because like, art almost stopped when he gave me the award. I was like, I can't even believe this.
That must have been like a surreal moment. That's like some sort of Russian sci-fi moment, isn't it? I mean,
it was a sci-fi film. My mum had a bus of people from Glasgow come in. Like, my mum literally brought a bus of my pals and family, and I just couldn't believe it. I was wearing a tartan dress as well, and it was like being in heaven.
Good grief.
I don't know.
So, one of the I'm sorry, I did warn you I'd cough a little bit. Just recovering
I'm
from
going
this
to sniffle
COVID
through this whole thing. So we're even.
Gosh, one of the I have a bugbear about Scottish culture, and I adore the place, but I don't think it gives itself the credit for the cultural content and the cultural capability of its people, like perhaps Ireland or others do. And Scottish cinema, tell me, what do you think about it? Where do you think it's up to? Scottish filmmaking, rather. Where do you think it's up to? How's it doing?
I think it's doing really well. From the point of view of where we started from with nothing, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do think we've got a long way to go in terms of people just believing in themselves and just being okay with each other making things.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes if you have a big dream, people are like, well, don't have that big dream. Yes. Don't go for the big thing because you want to start small or something. So I never had that. I was never like, oh, I need to start small or I need to be small. So I think I've just been like that ever since I was wee, and I don't know what it is. So it's not a very Scottish thing. And I think that in terms of making a story, you need to kind of have the might to do it, or like the sense of bravery or something, or it just takes a bit of like,
Yes.
you have to muster something inside you. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a very Scottish thing to be brave. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think it's deep in our history. I think it's in the blood of Scotland. It goes way back, you know.
Yes. Yeah, it's part of our
And
genetics,
folk
isn't it?
stories, and you know, it's part of our culture, folk stories. And there's nothing better than being in Glasgow and hearing a good story. Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, I think it was you know, the Bill Douglas trilogy, you know, the three films he made in the 70s. And I grew up in a mining town very close to where that was based. And obviously I was a generation after that. Just a generation though. I mean, that's what terrifies me, you know. And I remember thinking at the time, and I'm probably talking about 15 years ago, and I thought, where are all the Scottish films? So I went online and I tried to find every Scottish film, and I tried to watch every Scottish film.
yeah.
And after you got past all the American rubbish, because there was a lot of it back then, you know, in the 50s and 60s, Brigadoon and all that nonsense, and even Whiskey Galore, you know, because that was, you know, surreal. But then I started to find films like The Pinnacle. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Gaelic film, and obviously Bill, his work. And have you seen any of that stuff? The more,
I'm writing it down. I haven't seen The Pinnacle.
have you not? Pinnacle, it's about the Monroe and Skye. It's about that one, you know, the one that's a sheer, it's the only one that you have to be able to climb to get to do all the Monroes. It's called The Pinnacle, and it's in Gaelic, which is quite rare, you know.
Yeah.
But I think and this is where I'd like to really get into your experience. I think a lot of the Scottish culture is comedic, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. But even the poetry, you know, Robbie Burns, amazing. You know, Hugh McDermott, amazing. Who else is there though? You know, who?
There's loads of female Scottish poets that nobody talks about, and there's loads of female, you know, screenwriters. There's loads of female playwrights.
Is there?
And they're really, really, really influenced by that, you know, kind of thing that we've got. That's like, we can't help but be funny.
Yes.
No offense to the rest of the world, but we're just kind of funnier than everybody
else.
We are
funny, yeah, absolutely.
But we're funny in a way that is like, we all just get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're just getting it with each other, and when you have that heightened sense of what a culture is, it's so rich. That's the thing, you know. It's like so rich and so beautiful to be specifically from Scotland. It's such a magical place to be from. So I think it's easier to tell stories, even though it might be, you know, hard to fund stuff, or it's not like pure millions of dollars or millions of pounds or pure falling from the sky or something every day. It is cool that funding is coming more and more and more to our version of what reality is, because I agree with you, the stuff that started out that was Scottish was so cheesy and not, it was a caricature, basically, like offensive, you know.
It was,
and the more you've got Scottish voices doing Scottish things, just the better, you know what I mean?
The better, before we go into this, because I really do want to interrogate you almost about being a director, because I know nothing about it. But one of the, I put a call out to my audience, and I have to say, nearly every question I got asked to ask you was about Neds, because it has become I don't know. It's like it's a phenomenon, isn't it? I mean, I think so. What was it like? I mean, first of all, how did you get into that? How did you get involved in the Neds film?
I, first of all, have been pals with Peter Mullen since I was a teenager, because he became a mentor of mine, because he was really a pal.
Right.
And it was just kind of out of nowhere we became pals. I was going to New York and I needed somebody to basically guide me, and he told me a bunch of things to do and a bunch of things not to do, you know. So he's always been a guide on that level. When I made my first film, I showed it to him and we talked about it, and it was a big deal for me because I was like suddenly a director out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? It was like I'd been this caterpillar and then I became a butterfly, and Mullen was like, okay, you know. But it was a big shift. It was a real big shift, because then a lot of the stuff we talked about was it wasn't just acting, it was like directing stuff too, because he is, you know what I mean, he's such a good director.
Yes.
And so when he asked me to play his basically Aunt Beth in the story, when I read the script, I was so happy. And yeah, so Aunt Beth was a Mac model. Do you know what I mean? She was someone who had been in America and kept coming back to Scotland, and she's the one in it who says your dreams can come true, you know, like she believes that the wee kids' dreams can come true, and a bunch of them know that that's not true, that their dreams are not, you know, like her dreams. It's not just like anybody's dreams can come true.
Yes.
So the sort of mysticism in that, and like the dark and the light of that, like the alchemy of that film is so interesting to me. The fact that it was all real guys. It wasn't
actors.
It wasn't middle class actors, thank God. And Mullen had the bravery and like the sense to hire real souls, you know, and working with them was the highlight of my whole life, I have to tell you, because every day they were so funny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were so funny to work with. Like they couldn't stop having beginner's mind about stuff, you know?
Yes.
And that just was so refreshing to us. Like I can't tell you how fun it was to work with them. They were brilliant, you know?
You know, I had a night with my friend that I told you I do this music thing on a Friday night about the Glasgow Apollo. And we watched Neds, and then we watched Ratcatcher after it.
Yes.
You know, Lynn Ramsey's film. And it was like,
so good.
Oh, it was just magic, you know. It kind of, whenever people ask me, I don't know if you did this as well, when you were in the thing, but whenever somebody asks me, you know, what was it like growing up where you grew up, watch Neds and then watch Ratcatcher, and you'll see what it was like growing up where I grew up. And I think both of those films are absolute genius. I do. I think that and I'm not just saying that because you can look at other videos I've done. I've spoken about Neds before, but so how then? Let's get into the directing thing, because this is where I'm excited about. You've been on the show, and I'm sure everybody watching is excited about it, because you went over to New York, then you went to California, and you wrote and directed a film. What's a director? What does a director do? Because you're a storyteller, I'm assuming, but what does a director do?
Yeah, well, most of the stuff I direct, I've written it as well,
right?
But a lot of the time I've come on and I've got somebody else's scripts that they've asked me to do. So I've done it both ways in terms of storytelling, and I feel like I like both. Do you know what I mean? Like I just can't get enough of it. I've done it so many times that I find it brilliant. You know what I mean? I think it's a really good thing to do. I think when you're directing stuff, it heals you, and it makes you feel like you're looking after other people. It's really like being, you know, somebody who's listening, somebody who's kind. All of my sets are very happy places. They're very, very like respectful environments, and they've always been that way. Do you know what I mean? So people, I think the Americans are always like, oh my God, like American crew pure love working with me, because they're like, what is this? Like I usually I've given people 8-hour days before where they're used to 12 or 15 or 16 or 20 days, you know, 20-hour days. And you're like, you don't need to do that to people. I'm organized. So, you know, with the actors, we've all done a lot of preparation beforehand. We've rehearsed a lot beforehand. With my DPs, I always do a lot of the shot listing. We do that beforehand as well. So by the time we get to it, the crew's so happy because we're all prepared. We're not trying to find what we've, like, we're not looking at it for the first time going, how do we do this?
Right, okay. What does DP stand for, Marianne?
DP stands for Dead Poetic. No, it stands for Dead Poets. No. A DP stands for Director of Photography.
Ah, right. Well done.
It's a cinematographer, you know.
Right,
so
okay.
It's the person who's like planning the shots with the director. So because we've done that ahead of time, it's so much better than having 55 chats on the day.
Yes, okay. So
I don't have fresh chats on the day.
Yes.
Scott, I'm not that kind of person.
You're not that kind of person.
I've done it much before that I know what it is.
Right, okay.
And the actors feel like they can explore stuff and they feel comfortable because we've all talked so much as well and figured out what they need, because every single actor is different, you know.
Yes.
And you, as a director, you kind of have to figure out what it is they need. Sometimes they're scared and you just need to tell them you can do it.
Yes.
Sometimes it's worse and they're not scared, but they're like, I just don't, I don't understand it. And you have to like go through it with them and figure out what they don't understand. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yes.
Yes. And it's really just like being a fear. This is a funny thing in terms of Scotland or Glasgow. It's like being a fear volume controller, where you just kind of, when someone comes in and they're scared,
yes,
whoever it is, whatever crew member, whatever person, head of department you're talking to, or like if it's an actor, if they're scared, you just have to kind of talk them off the edge and make them feel like they can do anything. So I think because I did plays really early, and I did plays in America specifically on the stage when I was 17, that was scary enough, to the point I was like, right, if I've done that, I can do anything now. Like being Scottish and being like, okay, I'm just gonna do this in New York, like the audacity of that was so mental. Like I'll just be like, fine for the rest of my life. Everything else is downhill from there. Like
it's what we say in Glasgow. Somebody's a bit gallus. It sounds like you're a pretty gallus individual. There isn't an English translation to that word, is there? Gallus.
I know there's not a lot of English translations for our best words. Like
yeah.
I love Beamer and I love all those Scottish words. Like
do you use
jammy
them
as well? I love jammy because it was jammy. Me being on the stage at 17 in New York, jammy is
that's jammy. That's right. That is jammy. But how then, specifically with the storytelling part of it? I mean, I heard somebody say of you, and I mean, if it happened to me, my head would have exploded. Somebody said you were the female Hitchcock in terms of your sensibility and the way you film. I mean, it must be a ridiculous thing.
I look a lot like him as well. I was like, thanks, guys.
Nonsense. But
wait for, like, get that compliment going, keep it going.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I get it. But how do you go about the sort of the visual dialogue? That I think most of us. I mean, I'm interested in your view on this as well. The written story, but how does one go about the visual side of it? How do you approach that? How do you go about it?
Well, it's just like having a dream. Like we all see stuff in our dreams, or you have a daydream, or you watch a film that you really like and it's like better than other films visually, and you're like, why is that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I've definitely felt like that. I just see stuff. When I read a script, I'll see it, and I'll see the transitions, and I'll see the colors, because I think every film needs to have justified camera movement. That's sort of like my religion. So I basically I'm like, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll justify the camera movement, and I'll go to sleep at night, and I'm happy. Justified camera movement is where the camera just follows the lead or the leads in the film. So maybe the film's about one person, maybe it's about a family. Like with Bitch, this film I did with Jamie King, it was about a family, and we just followed the whole family around. The camera follows whoever's moving, so you block it so that it's beautiful, and you know where everybody's going, but also the camera moves only when the leads are moving, and if they stay still, the camera's still. It doesn't mess about. It's cinema. It's not a joke. Like, so you really have to frame stuff. And I get a lot of inspiration from paintings. I get a lot of inspiration from like the composition in paintings. Like just going to like museums in Glasgow, I'll just get a spark and I'll know what I'm doing next based off of like a color or the way somebody's blocked the frame. Like if you want to see, composition that's really good blocking, just watch an Orson Welles film and pause it. Because if there's a group of people in an Orson Welles frame, each person's there for a reason, based off of like the power they have in the film and the power shifts, or who's in love. Do you know what I mean? Like if two people are in love, you can do stuff with the camera where like you do French overs, so you're really behind them, like because they're always looking over each other's shoulders.
Okay, got you. Yeah, got you.
And I'm obsessed with this idea of just opia. It's a word where you just, when that thing where you look at somebody and you meet their gaze, right? And you look at somebody's eyes and you can't stop looking at them because something's going on. It's like electrifying, right?
Yes.
That feeling is something that you put in cinema as well, that two people are looking at each other and we feel it, right? Like if you light people's eyes, and they've got a little highlight, like the actors have a little highlight in their eyeballs, that they're lit well, you know that this is like a film that's been warmly lit. And it's just basically a story of like always. It's just, I make the same story over and over again. It's something that goes from light to dark. I mean, from dark to light, basically. Because most of the films I see that I like, it's like they go light to dark. You know, they start okay and then they go darker. But the stuff I make, it's like taking that darkness and making it light. So I don't know what that means psychologically, but like with Bitch, it's about a woman who becomes a dog because her husband cheats on her. And it was based on a story that R.D. Lang had, a woman who became a dog that I heard about.
Right.
A Glasgow guy who was a real Glasgow genius, basically. Like he was somebody who talked to mentally ill people in a way that nobody had before, because he really just talked to them from where they were coming from, as opposed to like trying to diagnose them or push them in a corner, you know? Yeah, that. Yes, it! BITCH. It's a really it's a thriller, you know? It's a thriller. Yeah. So,
right.
In terms of stories, like I just let them come to me. Do you know what I mean? So, Bitch, I wrote that in 2 days, I think.
Did you?
Over a weekend. Yeah, it was mental. It just kind of came out.
Gosh.
That one was crazy because it was fast.
You know, I've actually heard quite a lot of writers say to me that it's almost like once you're out of the blocks, you know, the bee and the bang, you know, you got bang and you're off. That if you can get out of the blocks, it can just suddenly just flow, you know, really quickly.
That's true.
I've heard others saying it's torture. So, I mean, I have heard both perspectives, but that's interesting. So how...
Yeah.
Try and help me a bit more, because again, what I'm really fascinated by is, right, you said that you've got a way of using the frame and what's in the frame specifically related to what the story is, but that suggests to me that it would take somebody like me 40 years to make one film, because it would be like, you know, how do you know? Is it just you learn that process? I take it, but it just seems to me so, you know, where the hell would you start? Because even when I'm doing, you know, a piece of B-roll for a corporate film, God, it can take me blinking ages because I get all caught up in it. Okay, I'm not trained, I don't know what I'm doing, but do you think it's all inside? Do you think it's just experience that drives it?
I think it's just an instinct, right?
Instinct.
It's like a sense of smell or a sense of taste.
Yeah.
If you keep smelling the same thing that smells really nice, you keep making more, you keep feeling like you want more of that smell. And the same thing with certain foods. Like if you just eat foods that you really like the taste of, something happens to you kind of on a joy level where you feel like you've followed your instincts.
Yes. Yeah.
And okay, like you're allowed. Do you know what I mean? Like I think a lot of the time, I think people who are really artistic and creative, whatever their field, right? Like you can be creative in any field.
Yes. Yes.
Following that instinct it's a major thing to do. It's like following your own sense of what you think is good and what you want, because no one else knows that. Like no one knows what your specific taste is.
Yes. Yes.
Or what you want to see out there in the world. Like that's really what drives me, is like I want to see stuff that isn't there. Do you know what I mean? I want to see loads of Scottish women in a bunch of films, and I want them to be funded all the time. And I also want the Scottish Women's Library to go on forever, and I want someone to make a film about like Winnie Ewing. And do you know what I mean? Like I think there should be like a goggle box that's Scottish, that's only ours, that's not like English people talking about TV. Do you know what I mean? Like I want to see Scottish voices chatting about stuff over and over again that we think is funny, that's different than anybody else.
Yeah. I know, I'm with you big time. I mean, one of my...
That's my drive. Like that's why I do it all, and because I've got that fire under me, because that stuff isn't there yet.
Yes.
We're like in a hurry. My thing is like I'm in a rush to get to that place. So
yes, no, brilliant.
That helps me as well. Like it's like my instinct mixed with drive.
Yes. I've got you know, one of my heroes from Scotland is Nan Shepherd.
Nice.
And she's almost unknown. You know, you talk to most Scottish people. Have you heard of Nan Shepherd?
Yeah.
You know, and you say, oh, she's on the Fiver. You know, oh, so she is. You know, but she's not famous in Scotland. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I did a whole show about her a while back, and people were all going, never heard of her, never heard of her, never heard of her. And I said, my God, you know, she wrote the best book about Scottish wildlife and the environment ever. It's a fabulous, but it's really interesting that. But I need to come back again though. So I'm asking the same question about 3 times from different directions. But this right, when you write the story, I think I can get what you just said, right? Because if I'm picking you up right, it sounds like actually this is what Bill Douglas was like. He when he wrote his screenplays, I don't know if you ever read any of them. They're very short, but they're very visual. You can see what he's saying. It's really obvious. What if you're doing someone else's story? What do you do with that?
I get really inspired because I didn't have to write it, and I'm like, okay, there it is.
Right. Okay.
It's
and then
to
what?
jump in ahead of the game. I do the same thing where I see the visuals of it, and I can tell that because films are about like signification, right? Like there's something that certain films are about, like it's about a ring, or it's about a piece of jewelry, or it's about like, somebody putting a hand on the back of their neck. Because I think when you put like your hand on the back of the neck, that's a very cinematic thing to do, because when you see the back of somebody's neck, that's us as the filmmakers saying, this film is about this person. If you see the back of their head, because this is the person who's dreaming it, or we are the dream who are watching it. Like the dreamers are watching it in the audience, because it's a really special thing to like go watch something in the cinema, or have someone like put a film on in their own house. It's very like special, So I like to see those visuals, like the sort of sensual sense. It's like signification basically that I get really into, and you kind of have to do 3 of them. So you'll see like 3 things repeated in a lot of films, in different ways, and I just like to do that.
That's interesting.
And it makes you have, as a director, this visual language that like clicks on. And I don't think directing is difficult because I've done it so many times, but in the beginning I think there was stuff that I wanted to do with my first film that ended up being really good instincts. And so I don't know, I think it's kind of like anything. If you try it and you're really good at it, then that's brilliant. There's a lot to be said for just finishing something and getting out there. I never wanted to make a short film because I always wanted to make a feature film.
Yes.
Because I don't know why I didn't want to do like 25 shorts. I wanted to put it all into features.
Then you ended up getting an award from Sean Connery. I mean, it's just bananas.
So crazy.
It's crazy.
And he was playing a character that he was always playing like characters that were dead sensual. He was playing men very sensually. Like I like that thing of characters and stories, male or female, especially because we're from Glasgow and people are like this in Glasgow, where you're very strong as a woman, or very vulnerable at the same time. Like you can cry and you can be tough, and that is amazing to see, in guys and in women as well. It's like you want to see those different characters, like the breadth of them, and that like you don't want to just see people who are like just macho or just crying. You want to see like the dynamic realities of characters, and I think that is pure mega. That's just what I do it for as well.
You've reminded me of, I mean, when I was growing up, and I often one of the and you might have a view on this, and I might be talking nonsense, but people talk to me about the patriarchy, or about men dominating women. Not where I grew up.
I know. I know exactly.
Why
women are so strong in Scotland. It's like no, like it's such a
experience that, and it's interesting. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that actually. I'm gonna.
You're like Glasgow or Scotland, you throw a stone and there's always a strong woman that catches it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take you to the other side of your experience, which is you've also done a lot of work in front of the camera. So you've done all this directing and working with your directors of photography. I know what they are now. What happened? I mean, I suspect the in front came before the behind, did it? Was that your initial experience, or what was it?
Well,
maybe not.
What happened. Okay, I was doing SYT in Glasgow when I was like 14. I went to the Scottish Youth Theatre, and it was pure Gothic. I was a goth. It was like in a Gothic building, and I was so excited about it. And I was like, if I can I was like, if I could just do this somewhere else that's not Glasgow and actually be Glasgow about it and have the authenticity that I've got right now, then I'll be happy. And I think that kind of set me up for film acting in a weird way, because I didn't want to do it unless it was really, really good, right? So like, it's like if my pals in Scotland are not going to think it's brilliant, I'm not doing it. So that sort of dictated what I chose to do and what I chose not to do. So I think the first thing that I did was Good Dick, that was on film. Or actually, I did Bryce Howard's film first. My pal Bryce Howard put me in her film, Orchids, that she directed. That was the first thing I ever did on camera after I had been in plays in New York. And I loved it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh no, this is so great, because it's a wee bit more satiating because it stays around longer. Do you know what I mean? Like, a play is so deep, and you do it every day, and you do 8 shows a week and all that stuff, and it's wonderful, but you also don't get to keep it, kind of, you know?
Yes.
The audience gets to keep it. And also I was like, oh my God, like, I really want to do Shakespeare. Like, I just want to do Shakespeare in a Glasgow accent, because it rhymes, right? Like, when I do Shakespeare in my Glasgow accent, it rhymes in a way that it doesn't when I do it in a posh English accent.
Right, yes.
Because like, they take the rhyming out of it. Like, Shakespeare wrote for working class accents. He wrote for Scottish people. He wrote for, his actors were Scottish, they were Irish, they were working class English. I mean, they were Cockney and stuff like that. And that's why it rhymes if you do it in working class voice. Right. And if you don't do it in a working class voice, it's like taking the joy out of it. And I was obsessed with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I have to do stuff that is as profound and dynamic as that concept, you know?
Yes.
So it was difficult for me, because I wasn't going to just do anything that was about, you know? And I did feel like I needed to write my own part in order for that to be helped along, you know, to have a woman who, you know, isn't the perfect character, or doesn't, like, in Good Dick, like, my character doesn't really wear makeup, and she doesn't really wash and stuff like that, and like she's got reasons for it, you know what I mean? So
yes. Are you still proud of that film?
It was such a high bar, that film. Like, it really set this high bar, this, like, it was really good, you know what I mean? It was really, really good. And I didn't take any prisoners with that. Like, I remember before making it, I told my family, I'm going to make this film, I'm going to direct it, and if I don't direct it, I'll just die. Like, I'll actually die. Like, I'll die inside if I don't get to direct this film. And they were like, you're directing it, like, really soon, you're not going to die. And I was like, I know, but I just feel really intense about it.
God, you really are from
Glasgow. Because I was so young
as
well. It was really scary. Like, it could have gone wrong, and it didn't. So I'm kind of like, dodged a bullet there, because it could have just been like nobody saw it, or people saw it and or like 2 people liked it, and that's fine, or my mom would have liked it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's all I kind of did it for. I was like, if my mom and Peter Mullen like this, I'm all right. Like,
yes,
that was the standard, you know.
Well, that's pretty good standard, right enough.
They're really good artists, my mom and Peter Mullen. So I was really just making it for them. So they're the reason why it worked, honestly.
Did you ever suffer from something that I know a few Scots, including myself, have suffered from, and that's the sort of tall poppy syndrome when you've gone back to Scotland? You ever get any grief?
Yeah, but I like it. Like, it keeps you on your toes.
It does keep you on your toes.
It keeps you from going to that mental place, you know?
Yeah. So you don't become Sheena Easton. Sorry, Sheena. You stay being... Sheena.
Yeah. But I love it, like, when people from across the street are like, hey, you, see you, white hat, Pulka, I know you. And I'm like, what does that mean, you know?
Okay, I know your mammy.
And I'm like, do you like my hat or not? Or like, do you know what I mean? There was guys who would come out of pubs in the middle of the day, like 11 o'clock in the morning. Like, I don't know if they'd been in a lock-in or not, but like old men, like with no teeth, who wanted to chat to me, and just, you know, really were like, what is it all about? Like, why have you left and why are you coming back? And like, you know, they were like, they thought it was really sketchy, you know. I
live near Stratford upon Avon. I'm 20 minutes from the Royal Shakespeare Company. I mean, I go there every month. It's great. But one of the things I get a lot is exactly that. I get, why did you leave?
Yeah.
And I don't know what I think I know what your answer is, but my answer is, well, I was following my heart, you know, because I had my partner, you know, so I had to move. There was no, it was a choice.
You
know.
were like in love. You were really in love.
Yeah, and you've got to do it. You know, you've got to. But I kind of, and maybe it's true for everybody. I don't know if I suspect it's quite strong for a Scottish person, but I am way more Scottish than I ever was living as I do in England. You know, I can't abide English football. I'm a Hearts fan. I get my local pub now puts the Scottish football on because I go in all the time and say, get that English crap off and put the Scottish football on, you know, and they do it now, you know, and we have a right laugh about it. There's never any conflict and it's a right laugh, but there is something quite, I don't know what it is. I mean, I told you this other thing that I do about on Friday night, I do a live show about the Glasgow Apollo, right? And you okay? I can still see you. You okay? Can you hear me? Oh. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh. Can you hear me? Obviously not. Oh dear. Oh no, I don't know if you can hear me at all. But I can hear you again. I can hear you again. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you or see you.
Oh, that's bizarre.
This is exciting.
Hold on. Let me just.
Should I do a little? Should I do a little come back in?
Yeah. Try that. Yes. Go. Go. Let's see. Go out and back.
Yeah, I'll go out and come back. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Testing. Oh, just test this. Testing. Right, can you see me?
Yeah, I can hear you as well. That's great. Can you hear me?
Thank goodness for that. That's weird.
That was so dramatic.
Well, the good thing is
some drama in the third act.
I reckon you did that deliberately.
I know. I was like trying to keep it like a really high drama. It's a tragedy. It's not a comedy today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of forgotten where we were. Where were we?
We were talking about love. We were talking about love and turning off the English football for Scottish football.
Yeah. And I think, get back to that.
So you were following your maiden across the lands for love, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's something about, there's a really strong, I mean, Sean Connery used to talk about it all the time, didn't he? Although he lived in, and he got a lot of abuse for it from other Scottish people. But I remember I went up to Glasgow to do something about some music stuff. And I went to the Barrowlands to see a mate of mine's in a band called Gun. Do you know if you know the band Gun from Glasgow?
Wow, that's
cool.
Well,
Paul's the drummer. I was at school with him. I've known him forever. And across the road from there, just about, there's a famous Catholic pub called the Saracen's Head, the Sarahhead. If you ever remember the Sarahhead.
Yeah.
And I arrived early. I'd come up from London, and I arrived early, and I went into the Sarahhead because I was meeting Paul across the road, and there's all these guys, just like you described, these older guys, and it was absolutely brilliant. I could have sat there all week listening to these guys, and most of them were like, they'd worked in the steel yards. They were, Red Clydesiders. They were, they were for the Gorbals, which is where my family came from, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I remember coming home and mother half saying, can't understand the word that you're saying. So the accent just came, the vernacular just came straight back again. So it's quite entertaining. It's quite entertaining. So okay, well, can I, a couple of things before we finish? That's 45 minutes already. That's ridiculous.
What? No way, it feels like 5 minutes, Scott.
43 minutes, unbelievable.
No, that was too fast.
The
We
other
need to do
thing,
it again then. We have
well,
to
I'd love
keep
to.
doing
I'd
this
absolutely
then.
love to. But the other thing I really need to get to, because I want to know, I was asking you about being in front of the camera, and in the last wee while, you've really been in front of the camera with your TV stuff that you've done on Netflix. There you are. I can see you. You know,
Doing our own wrestling and getting Emmy Awards and
aye.
Golden Globes.
What's this about? You know,
It's
how
about
did you get
Glow
into
Girls from
that?
the 80s. It's
Yeah,
1980s. It's really
yeah,
what happened. There were these wrestling pioneers who were women in the 1980s and
yes,
came up with all these wrestling moves. So we were just doing an homage to them. That's a narrative basically, and it's a 3-season epic that's still on
yeah.
Netflix. And my mum is actually a #1 fan of Glow. It's really,
Really?
my mum was like, I knew this kind of thing because she loves seeing all the different types of women together, like different types of bodies, but also different people coming from different religious backgrounds, everybody coming from everywhere, basically.
Yes,
It's like not just white people and not just white dudes, no offense.
yes.
Your
None
Scottish
taken.
doesn't count.
No.
And I was like thinking about that because my mum was like saying that she thought she'd see something like that, but not until she was in the old people's home. Not that we're going to put her in an old people's home because she's not going there. She's going to hang with
No.
us. But I just think about that as well because it's like it was sort of ahead of its time, but then again, really necessary. So you can't get enough of a bunch of strong women wrestling together, doing all our own stunts. Basically, we could have died any day that we did it, you know, because
Really?
it's really dodgy stuff. Yeah, like it is
Right.
really scary. Like you're landing on concrete, you're landing on your back and your neck all the time,
Yes. Gosh.
or you're trying not to land on your neck.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So I have never had more fun on a TV show because of the wrestling. It was so brilliant. It was so impactful and powerful, and like I played a Viking as well, so I wasn't messing about. Do you know what I mean?
It's quite appropriate.
I know. I was like, this is so appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was the training like? It must have been ridiculous then.
It was ridiculous, Scott. You
Yeah.
would have been so brilliant in the ring. You would have just been like, right, we're going for this. I had a lot of like stage combat training, do you know what I mean? From doing a lot of stuff in plays
Yes.
and keeping it safe. You know, like I love people, when I'm a director, I love keeping people safe. Like I don't believe in like actually hitting anyone or actually like, impacting on anyone. Like I don't think you should hit anybody, even if it's a slap. You just like do it and you stack it for camera and then it looks much better and you can sell it better. And that's called being a performer, and it actually works, and you can do it 1,000 times instead of doing it once and you knock the guy out who you're working with.
Yes.
Even on the stage, you don't ever actually have to hit anybody. That's fascinating to me, that you can go from like gang life in Glasgow where people are actually killing each other with knives to everybody's safe and we do this for fun. I think that's what I got from Neds was like, wow, this is cooler than, it's like being a ninja or something. It's cooler than actually fighting people, to just pretend we're doing it and show people in a film and get paid for it.
That's
lovely. It's more interesting. That's sort of where my passion for Glow originally kind of came from, is like I felt like I could do anything because of Neds and being part of that, and knowing that when you are physical, it does do a lot of good for people, you know. And I have this protective instinct. I've got a gene that's like, I will go the distance to protect people. I'm not aggressive. Like I don't just like go out and like get aggressive. That's not part of my makeup. But I'm definitely, if you tell me that somebody's hard done by or they're an underdog, I will get in a fight for that person. Like, you know. Brilliant. And it's not like in real life. It's just kind of, that's how I'm built, and that's how I do stuff in the acting realm and all that. So it's just funny. The Glow girls know that about me, that if they were like, hey, do you want to protect her? I'd go, yes, you know.
And is that ongoing? Is Glow still going?
It's still on Netflix. We're not doing it anymore because COVID happened and all that. But it's still really good, and it's still, I don't know, it's still so funny because it's set in the 80s and it's all the stuff that, you know, was so ridiculous about the 80s, but it's also just really interesting about a group of ladies who get together, and it's almost like they've got a theatre company or something. Like they're making interesting work, you know. And I just find it dead dynamic, and it's cool because a lot of people who really watched Glow loved it. I got the job because I had done Girls on HBO. I was in Girls for Lena Dunham, where I had a Scottish accent in that, and I was like, thank God, because Lena was like, just be Scottish in it, and I was like, yes. And I wore my kilt from Marks and Spencer's that I got from Argyle Street, because I was like, can you guys get me a kilt that looks like this? And they were like, no, we don't know how to get that. And I was like, okay, but it looks so good. And Lena was like, yeah, why don't you just wear your own one? And I was like, this is from when I was 14 that my granny bought me, and my granny bought me this. So it's like really funny.
Excellent.
It's a very Glasgow outfit, my outfit in Girls. It's like,
I'm gonna have to go and watch. I've not watched that, so I'm gonna have to go and watch that.
it's season 5. I play like Jessa's sister.
Right, okay.
Season 5, yeah.
I'm going to look.
Yeah.
I do have a vague recollection of something in the media about it, actually. I definitely do, because it was a Scottish accent. But part, I think it got the media over here. But anyway,
Yeah.
I asked you if you would bring an artifact with you that's got a little story behind it. Did you manage to bring something?
I did. Also, it's so nice because I don't know if you guys are ready, but it's going to make you all cry.
Oh, dear.
It made me cry. So after we were in a pub on the south side when I was done with Neds, the day I was done with Neds. And Mullen brought this into the pub.
My God.
And it's, hang on a minute. I'm trying to get it so you can actually see it.
That's it.
It's a picture of him and me, right?
Right.
Here you go. That's better.
Got it.
It's a picture of him and me, and it says, to my beautiful darling Marianna, the best thing that ever came out of the Byers Road, because I met him on Byers Road the first time I ever met him. Do you know what I mean? And it's true, like, it is the best thing. We're better than Greg's. Lots of love. I can't thank you enough for the performance.
That's
Peter.
amazing.
It was amazing because I was so excited to have red hair in Neds. Like, I had red eyebrows. They dyed my eyebrows red, so I would look like, you know, this real Scottish aunt.
Good grief.
I was just so happy. Like, we were shooting in all these places on the south side, and my granny came to the set to visit, and it was the day that we were shooting, like, the opening of the film, and Peter put my gran in his director's chair and put his headphones on her,
right.
And she didn't know what was going on. Like, my granny didn't know that was the director's chair, because obviously, like, first time on a set.
Yes, yeah.
But see, just in that moment, him just chatting to my mum and stuff, he knows them really well, like, from a long time ago. Like, we had been pals for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
But just that one gesture, like being nice to my granny, was everything, right? Like, that's like, talk about feminism. Like, he knew, like, that he just had this natural affection for her and wanted to have her, like, give her, like, the best day possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think if you can do that, that's like the lesson of, like, being a great director, right? Like, that's more important than anything else you can do or teach. You have to be like you have to be the example, and people will learn from you from just that, like, your innate kindness as a Scottish person. Like, it's just so sweet, you know. And I've still got pictures of him and my gran, and it's just the funniest. It was like the funniest day of my entire life, you know, because she got to watch the whole scene. She got to watch me do the whole scene the whole day, you know, from, like, the director's perspective. So
yes, I mean, it is incredible that, I mean, his career, I don't think he's ever made a bad film. I really don't. I mean, there's maybe been a couple of parts.
Probably right. He hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems to, every time you watch him, and if you've never heard of it, even if it's a little pop, that thing about swimming the channel, you know, oh God, it's been done a million times. But my God, he made me cry. You know, he just seems to be able to grab you somehow, doesn't he? And it's well, that's a beautiful artifact. Thank you very much. That was quite an intimate one as well. So that was very.
I know, because I was never going to show it to anybody, because obviously it's, like, so private and personal, because it's so, like, meaningful. But then again, like, when you said artifact, I was like, God, I mean, it's really, like, historical now, to be honest. Like,
yeah.
To be fair, it's, like, the best thing I've got that I can think, because I'd be like, oh, I could show you, like, all these other things, or, like, different costumes that I've had, but, like,
yes. But
that's more meaningful because of because the kindness that was in it, basically.
Yes. What was really sweet was, and you kind of proved the point about why I want people to bring artifacts, because it then led to a lovely story, you know, and you don't need to remember that story. You know, you've got it. It's there. It's it's part of your DNA. You know, it's there. But the artifact helps you, and it's why I haven't even. This is why, you know, this wall I've got behind me. All of these are my stories.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more. There's more. If I zoom out a wee bit, I'll show you. There's a whole the whole wall of stories there, and I use that, and I always say to people, you don't need to remember your lines. You just need to have an artifact.
Yeah, that's true. You know,
boom,
that's really true.
Boom, out it comes. So a really standard question, but I'm really excited about asking you. Actually, what's your favourite story?
Oh, fuck's sake. There's only I like have to pick one.
Go on,
It's really
try.
difficult to
You can do
pick
three
one.
if you want, but try and do one.
Okay, I'll tell you one, right? Because it's really hard for me to pick one. It's like being like to a painter, like, what's your favorite painting? And they're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because okay, I'll tell you what it is. Basically, in mythology, there's this guy called Eros who was like Aphrodite's son, I think.
Yep.
I think that's right. He is the all-loving, all-present, all-calming lover, like the person in mythology who's just always there for you. So he's like who we base cave drawings on about love, or like your story you just told me about leaving Glasgow or leaving Scotland for love, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And like being steady in love, just like being there and loyal and loving it and enjoying it, you know, and being like reignited and electrified by the same love over and over again. That's Eros. It's not like, oh, it's not really a love that like lasts for one night. It's like an endless love, you know. It's like the sun. So I'm obsessed with him because it's a mythological character that you can see in, you know what I mean, like romantic comedies or whatever. Eros is all over the place in Scotland, you know, men and women are Eros in a bunch of different songs that you can hear. Do you know what I mean? Like it's in the story of what love is to certain people, because a lot of people are really into that kind of devotional love, and it's my version of why I'm making stuff and why I put Eros in films over and over again, basically. So it's like the same story, but told from a different point of view, but like it's the same at its core.
Mm-hmm. As they would say in Glasgow, that's a pure dead brilliant one to bring up, because it
in Glasgow, that's what we say in the pub. Eros is pure dead brilliant, by the way, right? Because it's like your chat up line. Do you know who Eros is? Right, okay. If you don't, I'll show you later.
Excellent, love it. Weirdly, I heard Stephen Fry was on. He wrote a book, Mythos, just recently, nice. And he was on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and he was talking about Eros.
Really?
Just last week, yeah.
Great minds think alike. No way, I didn't know
there
that.
You go.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's a national institution and all that. But yeah, that's lovely. I like that. And okay, give me a book. Tell me a book that you like. What's your favorite sort of book? Have you got one that you go back to?
I really like this book that's about high performing groups. It's about groups that get together, that get awards, get accoladed, as well as being really successful. Because I read it and I was like, oh my goodness, like it's called Culture Code, and it's just, you know what I mean, it's available for anyone to buy, and it's just really interesting about, like, they talk about the Marines, and they talk about a group of wee kids that made a spaghetti castle because they worked out how to do it, just because they didn't stop. They didn't like judge each other, do you know what I mean? Because they're kids. And they did better than like a certain group of CEOs who were just like judging each other the whole time and didn't get the task done. So it's fascinating, that stuff to me, like psychologically, how you get stuff done. And I think that's what I've been doing and like perpetuating, is like this idea of like you can make something that's good and big at the same time, you know, with a group of people that you've worked with before or that are new people. That's the book there. Yeah. I've just been into that book, and yeah, there's so many reasons to be fascinated by it, you know. Yes.
Well, I have to say that has been fabulous. I've really enjoyed that. That's one of the quickest hours I think I've spent on this show. So thank you ever so much for coming on. If people want to follow, I mean, I've got your Twitter thing here.
Oh yeah. And Instagram, I'm just Marianna Pulka as well. So it's the same on Instagram. Right. And on Twitter, I'm very easy to find. So anyone who has a question, they can always just.
How do you get on with the social media side? What's your relationship like with social media?
I don't know why I love it so much. I think it's because it's visual, you know.
Yes.
I like that, you know.
And I can
look at the good stuff. I'm an optimist, so I'm always looking at the good stuff and not the bad stuff. So.
Yeah, I kind of sit next to you on that. I mean, I actually think even the bad stuff sometimes. It's a bit like, and it's a horrible subject, but if you look at like pedophilia, people say it perpetuates. Well, it was there 30 years ago. We just couldn't find them. We can find them now because of social
now
media.
we can dig them out and
You
all.
know, aye, and we get the sods. And
Yeah, get the dry rot out of the wall. Like get
absolutely.
it out of the wall. Yeah.
That's a good metaphor. I like
think
it.
about that with like anything that's evil. I'm like, get it.
I really like that. That's a brilliant message. That's really generative. I've got a thing in my picture in my head now. But no, I share your view on that, and I think a lot of people. I don't know what you think about this, but I think there's a lot of people are like being offended. You said to me earlier, I hope I didn't offend you. Well, you can't offend me because you offend me. I've got a problem, not you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't be doing with folk getting offended. But yeah, I think it is how you take it, and I think what you said, taking the dry wood out the wall, that's brilliant. I will unashamedly nick that, and this is recorded.
You can nick it all, take it all. Anything I said that's good, take it.
Well,
even if it's not good, you can take it as well.
Well, thank you very much. It's been brilliant having you on the show, and I will make sure that when I do send it out, that I've got in the comments, I'll put your films and your various books, etc., that you've mentioned, because I think it's really useful for my audience. So thanks ever so much.
Thank you for having me, Scott. I had the best time chatting to you, and we have to do it again.
That would be lovely.